Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Welcome all new listeners, and welcome back to those who have heard my content in the past. If you want to know what is the make it or break it point in your professional career, you have to tune into this episode. Before I go on to the podcast, what is new? I'm coming off of a great weekend with the fam. We got away for a little bit. We stayed at a local resort. It's called the Welk in San Diego. It's fantastic. It's a good time away. If you're looking for a spot in San Diego, it's really close to the Wild Animal Park. So that was great. A lot of reflection, great conversations with my wife, just about the future and everything else. Gosh, it sets the tone for like the next, like I think we go on them like every other month, every 3 months, and it sets the tone like just for our relationship and what we want out of the kids and all these things. So it was great sitting by the fire talking about what the next 3 months to a year looks like. So that, and we're getting ready for a huge event, huge community event. I'm excited to host. We call Fit Fest in San Diego. It's a way to unify our community, and a passion of mine is raising scholarship funds for a local future healthcare provider. It's a passion of mine. I really am. I'm blessed to be where I am because people supported me along the way, and so this is my way to give back to the community and give back to a future physical therapist. So that's happening this weekend. So excited. Right. On to this podcast. So this is a good one. If you've listened to my podcast before, this is going to be fiery because I have some passion built into this one, and it's very, very critical for you to understand where you are in the journey along with this topic. So the the reason I brought up this podcast is because I was talking to two or three people this week, and they were frustrated frustrated with their outcomes. They're just like, I feel like I'm working so hard and I can't get the outcome I want. I've done this, I've done that. I don't know what to do next. Like, where am I going wrong? That was the question. We worked through kind of navigating where the challenge is, and I brought up a good point that I wanted to share with you. There's two pivotal moments in your professional career, two massive ones, like absolutely massive. And for many of you, that you will hit them, and you might be going through them now. And it's very important that you understand that, because before you start blaming your employer, your coworkers, the profession, and all those other things, I think it's very important to understand where you are in your career and what can come out of it, what it can be, what the journey can look like again, or what the prospect is. And it can save you a lot of heartache and headache for you to understand the context of your professional development, where you sit along that. I think it's very, very tough for people to see that, inside your professional development, your career, you see yourself in your journey. You're like, gosh, it's so hard. It's so easy. You only see yourself inside this small lens. And anybody looking inside, whether that's your spouse or your coworkers or anybody else, might be like, gosh, you're doing pretty good. You're doing great. But internally, you're like, I'm struggling and all these other things. Or you think you're doing fantastic. And the people are like, you got more room in the tank. You're not even cranking on it. And so you have to understand where you are. And today I want to share what those two make it or break it points are in your career path. And it goes to the discussion I had today, and the discussions I likely have probably once or twice a month with clinicians. So here's where I'm going to start. Um, Early in your career, this is the first point. Number one is the start, right? The start of your career path. For those of you who've been practicing for a while, do you remember this phase? The honeymoon phase, where you're like, gosh, this is the best job ever. I love this thing. I just got out of school and I'm going to just fix everyone. and I'm going to do it so fast, and I'm going to read all the research. I'm going to do all these things, and I'm going to study. I'm going to do the OCS. I'm going to do the SCS. I'm going to do the CSCS. I'm going to do alphabet soup. And you start doing all these things. You're like, oh, I'm crushing it. And then like life hits you. You're like, oh, I got sick. I went on vacation. I met somebody. I just got moved into a new apartment, whatever it is, right? Like all these other distractions along your life journey. And somehow all that momentum, you're going to be like the best PT ever. Yeah. Slowly starts to fade, right? I've been mentoring clinicians for over a decade, and I can promise you I can follow the path, and I know exactly where people are, and I know exactly what's going to happen. When people trying to come into my mentorship programs, I know I'm like, you're just out of school. Like I got to slow you down because I understand where you are, and I know what's about to hit you, or I know you just got into that new apartment or that new house. I know what the next step is. And so, do you want me to tell you the truth, or do you want me to play along and let you ride this roller coaster? And that's a very important conversation that I'll have with clinicians. And that's why I want to share with you that while you're riding this wave, right? Like this huge wave of emotion and momentum and excitement and passion, I think that you have to understand like this is normal, right? Like you are normal amongst the, if you are a superstar, right? If you classify yourself as a superstar, you're like, man, I crushed PT school. My passion is incredible. I'm good at my craft. And I've met a lot of phenomenal clinicians, and I think that you have to understand you're amazing, and there's a lot of you in this world, and that's very important for you to understand. Like, yeah, you're a one percenter in your local community. There's a lot of people like you who are just phenomenal, great work ethics, passion. They just want to change the planet. But you're also human, so you're a one percenter with like human traits. And when you change, when you upgrade your life and you start hitting certain walls and vacations and sickness and partners and other things, like that's humans. Like, or like it just happens. There's distractions and other like phases of life. You go through these things. So the start of your professional development is one of the make it or break it points. You're like, you come out hard, you hit the gates, and let's party. Let's become the best clinician ever. All right. And that starts to fade year 3 to 4 of being out of PT school or practice, clinical practice, right? So you have, and for those of you listening on anybody that I mentor, and there's, I would say 3 to 4 for clinicians, or if you've taken on a new role, meaning maybe you achieved a new status and now you're a clinical director, you're a clinical instructor, you're whatever it is, right? You take on a new role. It's not that your profession has changed. You now have new responsibilities. And when you have new responsibilities, you're a novice at them, right? Think about this. When you become a clinical director, you probably have never excelled in it because you just were introduced to it, or maybe you started on it, but you're not an expert. Think about this, like clinicians who come out of PT school, you're not an expert. You're really good at your craft. You have passion, but you have skills. You just don't know how to put them together yet. And you don't know what's going to hit you. And you have to figure out like where you can push and pull and make mistakes. Same thing happens when you're a clinical director. When you go from PT to clinical director, you don't think that you're just like this almighty great instructor or mentor. No. That's a new art. So you just got out of PT school from a mentorship standpoint, and now you're just learning how to mentor people. Like, oh, I pushed that one too hard. Why aren't they getting my message? There's a lot of layers to that. And so when you start leading and developing people and managing people, you are a rookie. When you become a clinical director, you are a rookie clinical director, and every day you're learning. Every single day you're learning. And my point to this is that as you hit that 3 to 4 year mark, that's, yeah, out of PT school, but also as a new role. And so for some of you who, want to open your own practice, you want to be a clinical director, you aspire to do these things, you're going to be rookies in those new roles and responsibilities. So don't think because you've been practicing 12 years means that you're going to be a great mentor. No. You are a rookie coach. So right now, if Tom Brady, who just got out of the NFL, decided to be a coach, he's a rookie coach. He's a phenomenal quarterback, but he is an average rookie coach. Why? Because just because he can't translate what his role was on the ball, on the field by himself. He can't teach thousands of other quarterbacks to do the same. It worked for him. So now he has to figure out how to relay that same information and message to other people in context that they understand. So when you hit these new time marks of 3 or 4 years, or new roles, you hit these make it or break it points. And the person I was mentoring this week, they're hitting that make it or break it point. They said, I feel like I am messing up. I feel like I put all the effort, I put all the energy, I execute, I'm doing the right things. I know my green lights are, my yellow lights, and my red lights. I execute on them and I just keep failing. I'm making the wrong decision. I'm telling people the wrong things. I just can't get the outcome I want. I said, you're not at a make it or break it point yet. And they said, what do you mean? I said, you started with heavy passion, right? That's the start. That's like time point number one. I said, there's two make it or break it points. The start. You were passionate 2, 3 years ago, and now you're at another make it or break it point, the second one. And that second one is when you're frustrated or tired. And what I mean by that is, within those 4 years of like going through these things, there's 4 phases, right? The first phase is you're super nice to everybody. I'm gonna do this thing, right? Like I'm gonna crush this. I'm gonna be so nice, and you're so accommodating, blah, blah, blah. You're like, oh, of course you don't have to know, you don't have to call and cancel. You can just no show. Don't worry, we'll fix it. Like, oh, sorry, Mr. Patient. Like, oh, it's okay, you didn't do your homework. Don't worry, we'll fix it. Right. You're just acquiescing to everything. Like you're so nice to people because you don't want to mess things up and you want to make a good like role for yourself. And after about a year, you start becoming a little more strict and you're like, gosh, it'd be great if you could, come on time. Maybe you should start doing your home exercise program. And then you start like asking other people in your second year, you're like, hey, is this normal? How do you do this? What do you do? And you build a tolerance level. You start like, okay, listen, you start being more confident in yourself and you've built a rapport. You understand how things work, a strategy, and you start telling people, listen, you have to show up on time, but you still tolerate things. And the third phase, usually third year, you're like, oh, all right, listen, no, you start providing guidelines. Hey, if you can't do this, then you're not allowed to come back. Or, hey, you've had 4 no-shows. Here's what I need you to do. Your outcomes aren't doing great. Here's what I need you to do. And you start becoming more firm, right? And then that fourth year comes a make it or a breaking point where you're like, gosh, I have no shows on my schedule. I don't have the athletes that I want, or my athletes aren't listening to me. I have these high profile people. They're just not listening to me. You hit this make it or break it point out of frustration. And you're like, I just can't take this anymore. I can't take it. For some people, that frustration point is they're not getting the outcomes they want. And at some point, you hit this make it or break it point. And you're like, F this. I'm not taking this anymore. I'm going to tell people exactly what to do. This is my clinic, my schedule. This is my role. I don't care. I'm going to have a conversation with the clinic owner, the clinical director, and be like, listen, I want outcomes and I am good at my craft. And I know I need to be more firm with my patients and I need to let them know exactly what I want for them to get the outcomes that I want. You hit this level of frustration. You're like, I can't take this anymore. No one's listening to me. Why can't I do this? And I'm telling you, because I've hit him. I've hit this in so many different ways. I've done the pro sports. I've been in residency. I've worked in different types of scenarios. I've traveled internationally. I've been a concierge physical therapist. I've started a cash-based practice. I've opened 2 or 3 clinics. I have a huge team. I've hit this at several points, and you are aware of what the barriers are, and you're like, listen, I have to do it. And I've struggled through all of this, and I just see it, and I see all these clinicians who go through this. And I'm like, gosh, like you're not there yet. I mean, unless you hit it, like I can't, like it's what you can take home with you. This is an interesting point that I told somebody. This is, I was talking to a physical therapist recently. I said, hey, um, if you're taking your coworkers home to bed at night with you, um, there's a problem. And for those of you who are listening, what I mean by that is Say you're having struggles with patients, or you're having struggles with your coworkers or your boss or whatever it is, and you're at home with your spouse or by yourself, and you're lying in bed and you're thinking about the problems at work, the people around you, the coworkers, and all this other stuff. You're taking those people to bed with you. And the only people that should be in bed with you is your spouse. And if you're thinking about work and think about other people, you're hitting a frustration point. It's not fair to your spouse, right? My wife and I have talked about this, and I think that if you are at that frustration point, you're taking kind of your coworkers in your brain with you to bed, or you're taking your patients home with you. You're hitting a frustration point, but not until you hit that barrier where you're like, "That's it. I'm gonna change. I'm sick of it." Right? Some people, for this make it or break it point, they hit it and they excel, they thrive, and they're like, "Forget this. I'm gonna go into and tell my patients they need to do their homework. If not, don't show up. Here's what I need. I'm talking to the surgeon. I'm gonna talk to those other people. I'm gonna be that clinician who is a boss." And then there's other people who hit these make it or break it points, and they're like, "Man, maybe I suck at my job. Yeah, maybe it's the patients. Maybe I have a really bad batch of patients. Yeah, it's the patients. Yeah, oh, you know what? It's my coworkers. Like, I really don't like my coworkers. Oh, it's my job. I hate my job. I hate my clinic director. You haven't hit the frustration point, and you're going to blame it on everybody, and then it eventually becomes, maybe it's I just don't enjoy this profession anymore. When you get to that last point, you're like, man, you're blaming your inability to conquer your own frustrations on your profession just because you can't own up and overcome this frustration and finally tackle something. You think this profession is going to be easy. You think that this career path is going to be easy, and it was supposed to be lined up perfectly because you saw all these other clinicians doing great, getting good outcomes. Well, it's because they probably hit some frustration points and they overcame them. They're like, nope, not selling for this. You ever talk to clinicians who've been, veterans, and they've been doing this for a long period of time, and it just seems that athletes listen to them. They're just like, man, how do you get athletes to like do that for you? How do you get them to show up? How do you get them to do exactly all their homework? How do you do it? And you're like, I'm doing and saying the same things. No, you're not. It's the way you frame it. It's the way you deliver it. It's the way you execute on it. It's because you've been so soft, so accommodating, so nice, the nice sports PT who thinks that like just by being nice, they're going to get the outcomes they want. No, evidence doesn't do that. A great, demeanor and being nice to people like doesn't get it. People listen to those who speak confidently, and they are willing to tell people like it is. And if you haven't hit that point, it's big, and like you're going to continue to just let people walk all over you. And that's the first make it or break it point where you're like, I can't take this anymore. I'm either going to change my coworkers, change my job, change my profession, blame it on the patients, blah, blah, blah. And then you take a CU course to make you feel better and think like, oh, this is going to solve it. All this movement course or this manual course or this taping course is really going to solve my passion for the profession. No, when in reality is you need to overcome these challenges and fears and frustrations. If not, you're going to hit this make it or break it point. Then some people are like, well, I'm just going to go part-time. I'll do another thing. I'll do a side hustle. I'll do all these other things. You're stuck, right? Like the reason why you're going in circles because you just haven't hit this head on. And I think that's important for you to realize. So then, all right, let's assume you make it. You're like, oh, conquer it. I talk to my patients, talk to the surgeon, talk to my coworkers. I love it. I'm reignited in passion, right? Whew. You just got over that 4 or 5 year mark. You're like, I did it. Now here's what happens next. Here's the next make it or break, because there's several of them, right? I said there's two: the start, and then every make it or break it point afterwards, which probably comes up every 3 to 4 years. And the next one is um, you start like having a life outside of your professional career, right? Think about this. You were the most selfish person early out of your craft, out of PT school, probably super selfish, right? Like weekends we're studying all this stuff. And you were like trying to be the director and all of those stuff. And you were super motivated for 3 years. And then you met somebody, right? Or like you were dating somebody. Now you're like going to think about getting married. And you're like, that person now starts taking your time. Now you're going from selfish to selfless. Now you're giving all your time away. And now your professional career path just starts to like dwindle a little bit. Like, well, I gotta pay attention to my spouse. We just got a new apartment, just got a new house. Now we're saving up for furniture. I got a new dog. I gotta walk them. Now your Saturday mornings at the coffee shop doing stuff is now towards the dog or sleeping with the spouse because the spouse doesn't want to study and do all this other stuff. They want to sleep in. So you're like, so you start working with the spouse or your partner, playing with the dog, and then you're like, but I'm gonna get a new house. You start renovating that. That takes up your weekends, and you're like, oh, let me just now like now we're gonna have a kid. Now I got the spouse and the dog and the house and the furniture and the projects, and now I have a kid. Now all that time starts to change, and that's normal. It's absolutely normal. I'm just telling you, think about this. How is professional growth going to compete with a dog, a spouse, a partner, a home, and a child and or a child? That's what I can't answer for you, but I can tell you it's very possible. It's very possible because I'm doing it now and I love it. Every ounce of it is divvied out. I have 3 kids, my dog, the house, my spouse, 3 locations, a huge team, and I still work on professional development, still sleep 8 hours. You have to ask, like, how is that possible? And I think what you have to do is you get better about your time, you get better about the frustration, you get better at communicating with people and outlining what your priorities are. And as a career path, you hit these milestones, you hit these make it or break it points. You're like, well, maybe I don't love PT. Maybe I don't do these things. Whatever happened to my old self? And as you hit these make it or break it points, you have to decide, is it professional career that you still want to be a part of? Or is there a way to balance it all? But what you won't be able to do is go all in like you used to. And that's very important to understand that just because you were in PT school, came out and you were like all in on the profession doesn't mean you can't do the same thing. It just means you can't spend the same hour. That's like somebody saying, oh, remember in high school when you used to do all this stuff, or maybe in college when we used to do all this stuff? Yeah, that was a long time ago. But now you're a professional who has a lot more responsibilities. Maybe you're a clinical director, and maybe you have a lot of students underneath you, and you're mentoring 3 4 5 clinicians, and you have a spouse, you have a dog, you have the house, and you're like, how am I going to do this? And what it comes down to is you're hitting make it or break it points until you hit levels of frustration and communication, so people, you outline your standards and exactly what you want for them. That's how people overcome these frustration points. And you have to understand you will have make it or break it points at different points in your career. The start, and then every make it or break it point afterwards. The start, usually that's easy because you're the most selfish, you have the most time, you have the least responsibilities, least roles, and it's all about you. And then you start developing other roles and responsibilities and other passions. Now you have to be able to do this. And the question is, how do I do this, Chris? How did you do that? What you have to do is you have to be very strict about your time. Hit these frustration points. Believe me, I've hit them, and I don't want you to hit these points. I think I gained 50 pounds one time in my life. And I dedicated my life to my craft, my spouse, and my kids, and I lost the time for myself. And so now I divvy those out equally. And I'm back down to my like great weight. I think I'm like 201, 202. I love floating there. I got down to 178 recently, and it feels good, but I like having a balance in life. I love my carne asada fries. I love my burgers. I love those things, but I still feel good at that point. And for some of you, you might not feel good about yourself, and you're putting all this time into your like clinical professional development and your spouse, and there's nothing on you. And you have to learn how to hit these points. And many times, whether you're 30 years old, 35, 40, 50 years old, you're going to hit these points. And it's very important for you to understand this is where people decide that I'm burnt out. I can't take it anymore. No, it's not that. It's just you're not strict with your time. You haven't hit the level of frustration. You have to hit those points. And the people who reach those sooner, faster, and overcome that are the most successful. Why? Because they get it and move on. For many of you, you think about things too long. You're like, should I not? Who cares? Just make a decision and move. That's how I get so much things done. That's how I mentor so many people. That's how I can still enjoy these times in life you're stuck thinking about things. Make a decision and move on. Make this is a make it or breaking point for you. If you're enjoying your career, perfect. How do you keep that? The way you do that is you find other people who are like-minded and want to do that. There's no way you're going to do this by yourself in your craft. I promise you, you will not. I don't care if you are a superstar, you will hit too many barriers. People will, you're going to lose people in your life. You're going to gain a spouse. You're going to lose, you're going to have extended family or immediate family pass, and that changes your career path. It changes who you are, and making that decision on, having people who are around you who are like, listen, I think you can balance this out, push that to the side here, here's stay focused with this. I think you're going to lose your momentum here. Don't do that. You got to have people in your life who understand that and get that, who've been through that and who can see that, not people to teach you to do more mobilizations, when the reality is has nothing to do with mobilizations, has everything to do with how you develop as a person, as a professional. Yes, mobilizations are important. Yes, movement is important. Yes, taping is important. Yes, on the field coverage is important. However, the journey is incredible. And if you can't see and you're so zoomed in, you will always focus on that and never make any movement. For some of you listening right now, you're probably in that zone. You're taking 27 courses, you have 80 different initials behind you, and you're not enjoying your passion. You're burnt out because you can't even use it. You're so frustrated because you're over here with your spouse and your house and your dog or whatever it is, and you put all this money, time, and investment into your education. Or you're on the flip side, you haven't gone into your spouse, you haven't gone into a home, you haven't gone into a dog, but you've put all this investment in, and you're scared that all that is now going to be spread with other things. That's very normal. But with the minute you hit these things, you have to have somebody around you, not just your spouse, because they don't get your professional development. That's not their role. The role is to love and support you. That's it. So of course they're going to accommodate and say, yeah, go ahead and work those hours. Yeah, if you want to work 12 hours, go ahead and take 27 CEUs this year. They're going to be so accommodating until you hit a make it or breaking point in your relationship. Then that takes it away from your professional development. This is just the natural progression and path of every single professional, whether you are a massage therapist, an athletic trainer, a physical therapist. I just had somebody inquire about a naturopathic doctor coming into my academy, and what does it matter? It's all the same path. I promise you, this is just what's going to hit you in your growth. And so, yes, there's make it or break it points. I said there's two. There's a start, and then every single make it or break it point afterwards. And here's a fun fact: this is why athletes come to see you, because they hit a make it or break it point. Let me explain. You have athletes who are like, I'm going to do this on my own. I'm going to do YouTube. I've been able to get everywhere myself on my own. Ready? I've been able to do this ever since. So I'm just going to YouTube some stuff, Google some stuff, try it on my own, buy a massage gun for myself, buy a cupping kit for myself, buy rock tape or kinesio tape for myself. And they start doing all their stuff, right? Because they're kind of like you, where if you're trying to do it all by yourself, I get that, right? Like, I get it. They're like, oh, I'm going to try it by myself. And they're like, oh, then they start following an Instagram account. And they're like, oh, here's the 27 best glute exercises. And they try it on their own and blah, blah, blah. What it is they're so narrow focused. They can't see the big picture. That had nothing to do with the knee, nothing to do with the tape. It's that they're running too much, or their form is bad, or their volume is too high, or they're training too many days. They can't see it. They're so narrow focused. You as a clinician can. Why? Because that's your job. You're like, oh, let me see the whole picture. Oh, I see it. No, no, it's just because you were like overdoing on these days and you need to control these days. So as a clinician, you're like, oh my gosh, I can fix that. You should have done that 3, 4 months ago. And the athlete's like, oh, I know. It's the same that I do as I mentor clinicians. I'm like, stop taking mobilization class. You're good at manual therapy. You don't need it. You're actually really good at movement. All you need is a framework based course. You need a whatever, insert here. I would take an on the field training. This is where you want to go. Stop doing that. I can see it because I'm like, I can see the lens. And for most of you, like, if you understand what you do for patients, you're really bad at for yourself. Why? Because you only see your lens. That's just the reality of how people are. You're a human. You're like, I'm not good at my craft, or I'm really good at my craft. I'm like, no, you're not. You're doing okay. But let's put you in the big leagues. Start working with pro athletes, not just community members, because it's not the framework. Or you start working with, pro athletes, but you try to apply the same thing to a hockey player or a CrossFitter or whatever it is. Like, they're different people. You have to understand the context, keep a wide lens, understand the framework. That is athletes who hit make it or break it points. That's why they seek out services. Clinicians, when they come to my academy, when they come to my courses, they've hit the frustration point. Yeah, they're learning. They come to me looking for, manual therapy or tips and tricks and barbell and course and all this other stuff. But reality is they're hitting make or break it points, and they're looking for courses to help them get out of it. And the best thing I can tell you is I understand that, and you need to understand that as your professional career grows, you will hit bumps and challenges and make or break it points. For those of you who are attending my management of the barbell athlete course, love it. I'm going to bring this up in the course as well because I want to be able to help. I get it. I want to be able to help you guys. If you're not attending the course, sign up for my academy. I promise you, I can easily see things that you're missing that you're like, crap. I thought it was my work environment. I thought it was my patients. It's blah, blah, blah. You're going to hit make it or breaking points. And I hope that you come over to the academy before you hit those make it or break it points, before you're 50 pounds overweight like me, before you're so frustrated, before you have disagreements with your spouse, before you buy that dog, or you blame it on the dog, or you're blame it on the house, whatever it is. I think if you can identify these things, stop thinking about it, make a decision and move on. You need to find these outlets. You find these sources to be able to help you get over that next step. It's just what it is. You can fight it all you want. You can fight it all you want. And in 2-3 years, if that takes you that much longer, and 20 more pounds on you, or more anxiety, more frustration, more depression, whatever it is, I get that. But the sooner you realize that, the quicker it is for you to overcome that. And no one judges you. No one really cares. That's an important, I say that respectfully. Your struggle, no one cares about because it's in your head. Nobody knows about that. But most people are challenged to overcome that because they're scared that they're going to be judged, seen as vulnerable, blah, blah, blah. Believe me, I lived it. Like, as a clinician, I lived it. I thought I was really, really good. And I was questioning, and I had all these points in my career where I was like, I thought I'm good, but I don't want to ask anybody because I think I'm dumb, or they're going to think I'm not as good. And I finally found mentors who were like, you knucklehead, what are you doing? Like, who cares? Nobody judges you. Nobody cares. Nobody cares but you think that other people care. And so the minute you can overcome that is when you make huge strides as a clinician. Right now, I make fast decisions, rehab protocols, progressions, mentoring people, like, say it, move on with it, and try it for a month. That doesn't work, move on to the next thing. But the faster you can make these decisions, it puts you in a better place to move forward. Versus most people are doing incremental changes. They're like, oh, let me just try grade 1 instead of grade 2. 6 months later, like, oh, maybe I should try grade 2, maybe not grade 3. Maybe I'm just going to look for another manual course. A year later, no change. And then they're like, well, you know what? Maybe it's not manual therapy. Maybe it's movement. Let me just take a movement course. Maybe, yeah, that's great. That'll do it. And 6 months later, like, oh, that movement course didn't work. I may try a different one. 3 years later, they're like, oh, maybe that's not it. Maybe I just need a different approach to things. I'm going to become a McKenzie specialist. Yeah, that's it. Let me try a McKenzie. 3 years later, they're like, they've made no progress in their professional career. Like, those people, they're just making incremental changes. And if you want to make incremental changes, that wasn't you at the start. You had this huge, significant spike in professional growth. Then you have this maintenance phase, and then you hit frustration. And then you make another spike because you're like, I'm tired, I'm sick of this. And then you hit maintenance mode because life happens. And then you hit another one. So there's peaks and valleys wherever you are. So are you at the peak? Are you in a maintenance phase? Or have you been stuck in a maintenance phase with incremental changes, a couple courses here and there? That's fine if that's the life that you want. But as a professional who's been through those peaks and valleys, right now I am at a peak, an absolute peak in my confidence, my approach to changing people's lives, both in the clinic and mentoring. Why? Because I'm not afraid to admit and change and identify when I hit those make it or break it points. Then you just become more ruthless, more honest, and tell people just the way it is. You're going to make a mistake. You're going to hit a roadblock. I wouldn't take that job. You're not going to be happy. Yes, it's a better environment. It's not going to be good for you. it's not good for the culture's not good for you. Move on. And most people take time and they dwindle on decision making. Who cares? Move on. The faster you can do that, the faster your life is happy. And you no longer take your coworkers, patients to bed with you in your head. And if you are, you're stuck, and it's not going to get out. A course is not going to get you out. And for those who are coming to my management of the barber course, it's in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whatever that is. I'll bring this up, and I think that there's not a lot of clinicians who will tell you like it is, and it's a passion of mine. I think that I hit too many frustration points with people I mentor, and they go back and try things on their own. I'm like, all right, forget it. Now I'm just going to be brutally honest with you. Stop. Like, you're done. Like, stop taking those courses. Stop trying to mobilize. Stop doing the progressions too early. Stop being so conservative. Just make the decision to be more aggressive in week 2. You just have to trust. Like, it's not going to flare them up. You're a human. You make good decisions, but you make slow, incremental decisions. That's human nature. They do enough to make change, but not make a dramatic change, both with their patients and their own professional career. So I'll get off my soapbox. This is it's a passion. And if you're in my academy and you're listening to this, or you've never taken a course from me, welcome to my world. This is who I am. I love this. And the faster you can take on this type of mentoring and success and strategies, the faster you can move. So wherever you are in your career path, whether you have kids or you have the dog, or you're in stage 1 at the start, or you're 20 years in and you've hit several milestones, and you still feel stuck. I get it. I know where you're at. I've been able, like, I get how fast you can get out. You just can't see it. So stop trying to YouTube or Google things. Just come over to the dark side. Come over to my academy. Come to the barbell course. I'm hosting it virtually or in person. I'll have a conversation with you via Zoom, private or in person. Whatever's in your head, let it out. I can help where you're stuck, and I'll help you get out of that. Because truly, I think that everyone can make significant changes in their career path with just some small tweaks. So there you have it. Those of you interested in my academy, drchrisgarcia.com/academy. If not, join me at the barber course, drchrisgarcia.com /barbell, October 28th, 29th of 2023. So there you have it. I will catch you guys on the next episode. Take care.